This video is for lesson 7.5, factoring expressions. In this video, I'm going to be showing you another way that you can rewrite expressions. Basically, this is the reverse of the first thing we did in this chapter, which was the distributive property. So you can think of it as undistributing, but we call it factoring. So if you recall the distributive property, we multiplied. So when we're working backwards, we're doing the opposite. In this video, we will be dividing. So factoring means to divide. So here's a few examples. Basically, what's going to happen is I'm going to give you an expression like 4x plus 12, and your job is going to be to divide the greatest common factor from the two terms in the expression, 4x and 12. So in this case, the greatest common factor between 4x and 12 is 4. So I'm going to divide 4x and 12 both by 4, and that would look like this. So 4 times the quantity x plus 3. Another example would be 8x minus 14. The greatest common factor is 2. So we divide 2 from 8x and 14, and we get 2 times the quantity 4x minus 7. So factor means, like I said, dividing each term by the greatest common factor. There are actually multiple different ways. Like if there are multiple factors, you can factor several different ways, but in this example, we are going to be factoring completely, which means we're looking for the greatest common factor. Okay, and I'll show you what I mean by the fact that we can sometimes factor multiple different ways. So take a look at this first example. You want to find the greatest common factor between 5a and 25. And in this case, that's 5. So basically what is going to happen is you're going to divide each expression by 5, but we don't want to get rid of the 5 because what we're doing here is we're writing an equivalent expression. So we're not just dividing by 5, we are basically taking the 5 and we're reversing the distributive property. So we're going to put the 5 in front, and then we're going to put the remaining expression inside the parentheses. So 5a divided by 5, 5 divided by 5 is 1, so you would get 1a, and then 25 divided by 5 is 5. So your answer would be 5 times the quantity 1a minus 5, or as you know, we don't need the 1 there, so you could just write 5 times the quantity a minus 5. In example 2, the greatest common factor between 16 and 20y is 4. So here's an example of where I said you can actually factor sometimes multiple different ways, but if the directions say to factor completely, that means to find the greatest common factor. So the greatest common factor is 4. So like I said, we're going to write the 4 down in front of the set of parentheses. We're just reversing the distributive property. So we're dividing 4 by 16, that's 4. And 20y divided by 4 is 5y. So here's our answer if we factor it completely. If I just factored it using another factor of 16 and 20 is 2. So let's say I wasn't sure that 4 was the greatest common factor and I thought that 2 was the greatest common factor. If I used 2, 16 divided by 2 is 8, and 20y divided by 2 is 10y. This is an equivalent expression. However, it's not factored completely, and I can tell that because 8 and 10 still have a common factor of 2 that could be divided. So depending on what the directions are asking, it isn't that this is wrong necessarily. It is factored, it's just not factored completely. So just be careful, make sure you follow the directions. If it just says factor, then this example, either of these answers would be acceptable. All right, let's try these three on your own. For example 1, 36 and 54, the greatest common factor there is actually 18. So you're going to divide 36 and 54 by 18. That's a hard one. You might have thought 3, 9, those are both true, but they're not factored completely. So 36 divided by 18 is 2, and 54 divided by 18 is 3. So that's a tricky one because 18 is a hard factor to recognize. If you remember from 6th grade, you can use the factor ladders to help you find the greatest common factor between 36 and 54. You could start with factors that you know, like 3. I think I wrote that upside down. So you could divide 36 and 54 both by 3 and get 12 and 18. Then you can divide 12 and 18 again by 3 and you get 4 and 6. And then you can divide 4 and 6 by 2. And finally you get 2 minus 3x. So you actually could do the factor ladders, and then to figure out what that greatest common factor is that would go in front is 3 times 3 times 2, which is 18. So that's another way you could do this if you're not sure about the greatest common factor. The second example, 15b plus 45, 15 is the greatest common factor, so you get b plus 3 or 1b. And for the third example, the greatest common factor between 24, 6, and 12 is 6. So you get 4r minus s plus 2. In this case, even though 24 and 12 have another common factor, since 6 does not, you can't go any higher than 6 as your greatest common factor because it has to be a common factor for all terms. Sometimes there is no greatest common factor other than 1, and if that happens, then we write this that the expression cannot be factored. So for example, 45 plus 14x, there are no common factors between 45 and 14 other than 1. So you would just write for your answer cannot be factored, and that is all you would do for a problem like that. Okay, let's take a look at one other example. A square has a perimeter of 8x plus 16. What is the length of each side of the square? So this requires that we know that a square has 4 equal sides. Here is an example of when you might not actually want to factor completely, because the greatest common factor for 8x and 16 is 8. But if we are trying to find the length of each side, there are only 4 sides to a square. So we are actually only going to factor or divide by 4, even though it's not the greatest common factor. So 8x divided by 4 is 2x, and 16 divided by 4 is 4. The length of each side is 2x plus 4. 4 is the number of sides, and 2x plus 4 is the length of each one. So our answer for this is just 2x plus 4 because the question only asks what is the length of each side. Okay, one last example. The length of a rectangle is 12 minus 4x units. The perimeter of the rectangle is 42 minus 8x plus 4y units. This says write and simplify an expression to represent the width of the rectangle. This is a very difficult question, so I want to give you a little challenge here, give you some time to try this and see if you're able to come up with the correct answer. If you get the correct answer for this question, you will get a bonus point. So what I want you to do, besides answering it here on the Edpuzzle, I want you also to submit your answer in a private comment when you click Turn In on Google Classroom. So I'm not going to give you the answer in this video because like I said, I'm offering a bonus point for anyone that gets this correct. So try it. If you think you have the answer, type it in a private comment in Google Classroom under this assignment, lesson 7.5, and I will check it for you.